incentive.
that have decided
For those of
to
you I haven't
help
had
their
the chance to
customers
meet, my name is Chelsea
secure.
Collier. I'm on the board of the Austin Smart Cities Alliance. Good. All right, cool. I'm on the board of Austin Smart Cities Alliance, our host group here today, and I'm the founder of DigiCity, which is a forum for talking about smart cities, specifically the social impact side of smart cities. Some of you have had the chance to meet through Smart Cities Connect. I serve as their editor at large, so I do a lot of reading and writing and listening, most important, listening. Oh, thanks for advancing the slides. I don't have a clicker, so there we go. Okay, so this is me, DigiCity and Smarter Cities for the Social Good. So next slide, please. Back in 2017 or 18, Dustin Heisler and I, who's also on the board, a very dear friend, super smart guy with eRepublic. Some of you may know GovTech or Governing Magazine, some of their media properties. He and I did a Smart Cities playbook because we were hearing a lot of the concerns that cities have and had at the time, specifically smaller cities who couldn't afford to do a big, huge strategic plan. They're saying, what do we do? Where do we get started? I don't even know where to go. So we created this over a couple of nights with some whiskey may have been involved. And we created that. It's on DigiCity. It is free to everyone. It is paint by number, use it, change it, share it, whatever you want. And I kept hearing three questions that came out of the thousands of times that's been downloaded, people emailing me, talking all the things, which is my challenges. I'm pretending like I'm a city leader right now. How can I get everybody on the same page? We've heard a lot of these kinds of issues today. Number two, data and analytics. We're swimming in data. We don't know where to start. What do we do? How do I make this useful? And number three, we really want to lead with equity measures. Every single city leader said that here on the stage today, brilliant people who I love dearly. But how do we do that? How do we really make this sensible? So I took it upon myself to say, all right, it's time to operationalize this Smart Cities playbook. And this is what I'd like to talk to you about today, a Smarter Cities Toolkit. So there are 9 steps here. These are all very, very important steps. And in my humble opinion, steps 5 through 9 is what groups like IDC does really, really well. And Ruthbea is going to come up right after I finish and talk about her 2 slides that she wasn't able to talk about at the end of her presentation. And I think it speaks very well to those steps 5 through 9. It takes large organizations with deep analyst expertise, lots of things, lots of people doing strategic plans, and I trust them explicitly. So what I love to do is steps 1 through 4, which is how you can get everybody together talking from the same page. You have lots of people in communities, not just in city government, who have lots of different experiences with technology. How do you wrap them around and build common language? And so these 4 steps is what I'd like to just go through here today. And again, I always want to do a little bit of a pre-statement, which is, yes, I'm a consultant, but I'm not selling consulting services. This is my my thoughts of being in this place, in this smart city space for the past 5 or 6 years. This is available to you. I'm going to talk about a couple of different resources. I'm happy to connect you or connect with them directly. Whatever you need, just let me know. Okay, next one. So just reset kind of what we're going to be talking about here today: ecosystem mapping, asset mapping, urban data and analytics, and community engagement. That's what I care about. And that's what I believe cities are most interested in right now as we're getting into this next stage of smart cities. Next, thanks. Okay, ecosystem mapping. This can be terribly difficult, or it can be actually super easy. We're really talking about 4 different sectors, and that can be subdivided by a lot of different groups. So government, duh, obviously. Industry, yes, of course. And that's everything from smart cities to global corporates and everyone in between. Academia, so these are your researchers, your practitioners, your administrators. Don't forget the administrators. They're a super important piece of this. And then this piece is left out, the social and civic groups in your cities. When was the last time you asked creatives and artists what they thought about smart cities? They're never asked, they're never invited. And so it's why I'm super jazzed about the work that San Antonio is doing, because they are making a concerted effort to go into the community and they're saying, hey, we haven't figured out exactly how to do that, but this is what we want to do. Next slide, please. So Kumu is a tool that's available online. There's a free version, there's a paid version too, but the free one is really good. And they can take those gnarly kind of long lists of stakeholders and communities and map them. And guess what? You don't even have to do it by yourself. You can open the portal, and I'm happy to share these slides, by the way. You can open up the portal and say, hey, community, who did we leave out? Who are you already connected to? And everyone can start playing around with it. It's this really cool visual map, and it moves and it adjusts as people put data into it. So it is awesome. Please check it out. Next slide, please. So smart city asset inventory. We talked a lot today about all these different levels. There's lots of different schemas. I usually come in and talk with folks who are everything from, I don't even know what a smart city is, I've never even heard of it, to subject matter experts and everything in between. So I like to use really, really simple schemas. This is one that has been effective in my conversations. There's a video on DigiCity, again, free for everybody to use, that explains all of these different levels if that's of interest to you. But, and I think somebody mentioned it earlier in the presentations today, is like understanding what's happening in your city. Even within municipalities, people don't know what's happening. There's lots of data being collected, sensors everywhere, who's doing what. And you have to understand what is already happening in your community, so then you can build on top of it and streamline everyone together. City of Houston actually has some really great examples of this too. Next slide, please. So you heard Dr. Mariela Alfonso earlier today, and in the demo reels, talking about her startup State of Place. I think this is some of the most exciting work that is happening in smart cities today. I do play favorites, by the way, because I can, and this is one of my favorites. And again, I'm not compensated by State of Place. This is not an advertorial. They're not my client. I just love, love, love what they're doing. So one of the biggest challenges, and this applies to every single community, is that you don't know what's happening on your streets. You can't solve a challenge unless you can really understand it. And so what State of Place will do, next slide, and I think Mariela did this really well, is they'll go in and they'll map the urban environment, the built environment, collect data block by block, and then score and benchmark based on what is important to that community based on 10 different equity measures. How walkable is your city? How drivable is your city? How much green space? You can overlay all sorts of different data indicators like crime rates, health outcomes, COVID outcomes, blighted property, whatever you need to know. And then there's a really interesting tool to visualize that data so everyone can come in and collaborate. And you don't have to be a data scientist. No offense to the data scientists in the room, you're all brilliant, but not everyone can understand when we talk in ones and zeros. We need to be able to visualize so we can collectively solve problems together. I love this tool. Yes, thank you. So fourth piece, community engagement. And I'm gonna just be like a fly on the wall as San Antonio goes through this process, because I think this is so important. And we all want to plug into our community and help make it better, right? I mean, that's why we're here. And so this piece is really, really challenging. Obviously, it's hard to do pre-pandemic. I think it's even harder to do while we're all kind of in this middle way. Next slide, please. So Citizen Lab, I've been working to really find who can do this piece well online. There are a lot of different tools. This is the one that I personally like the best. They're able to take some of those offline conversations, which are really important. It can be 5 people in a room, but those 5 people, their voice needs to be heard. But then what do? You're going to take Citizen Lab does a really beautiful job of that. So full testimonial. And then next slide. So this is what I really care about, is pulling people together, listening, understanding what our communities are asking and wanting us to do, and working together across sectors in order to collectively solve problems. So thank you so much for giving me some time to talk about that. Thank you so much for being here. Ruthbea, I think you're going to do your last 2 slides and we're going to bring it home and then have happy hour. How about that? All right, great.
Well, I'm going to see if I'm as energetic and chipper as I was this morning. I think this has been a really great day. I hope you all did too. I learned a lot. I took a ton of notes. I just liked hearing from such a broad group. I'm not so sure that my last 3 slides are going to be that phenomenal, but I'm here and we'll end at a high note. I think in some ways there's some things that in one slide in particular that might bring a lot of the discussion together that we had. Now, of course, I designed this to be the kickoff for the day, so we'll see how it works as the wrap up for the day. So this slide would be the one at the very end that talks about best practices and is kind of colorful. It's probably like 3rd or 4th from the end. That's okay. But while she's getting it up, I'll explain what it is. So I talked to you all about the maturity model that I developed. Starting back in 2010, I spent about 3 years traveling around, talking to a lot of cities, governments, vendors, ecosystem players around the sort of emerging field of smart cities. And from that, I developed this model that was trying to understand the phases that cities may go through as they start to develop in maturity around using emerging technologies. And within there, I thought, okay, so we have our phases, but then what's the measures, right? Like, what are the dimensions that we're scoring people on, and how does each of those measures behave differently within each of the phases to actually come up with a maturity algorithm and a score? So before I showed the slide of sort of the benchmark of cities over time in the US, which were ad hoc through optimized, those are the phases. And within the phases, there's these 5 best practice areas. And I'm now in the 3rd version. You can read it. It's in a couple book chapters earlier on, but now I'm in a 3rd version. We've added a few more best practice areas, like we weren't talking about in 2009 digital inclusion as much. So now we have a lot of things around skills and equity and other things. Advanced analytics, AI was actually not really talked about then either. So, so what you see here are the 5 best practice areas. And I think as a sort of wrap up, this is what we've really been talking about in many cases through the projects people have talked about, through the examples of what they've been doing, which is vision, culture, process, data, and technology. And so these underneath are the things we actually score on when we benchmark a city and we benchmark their departments. So within vision, looking at the strategy, do you have one? The leadership structure, do you have a champion? Other people who can push this long-term complex project through? Do you have a business case? Do you have, somebody who's believing that there's going to be an outcome that's desired from these projects? And I highlighted budgeting and digital skills because I think those have been big challenge areas. People didn't have money, they couldn't find maybe investment, it was hard to convince city council, and there was a lot of lack around skills. Maybe, as we've said, they didn't have an analytics person, they were short-staffed, and that was kind of in hindering folks. Culture is also incredibly important, and really this is about the ability and the culture of a department or of a city to actually absorb innovation and change. So how much work are you going to have to do to make some changes? Are they going to be interested? Are there going to be workflow process changes that people are going to be open to? And that's really important because, you're not dragging people along. You want this to be really a community, not just the external community, but an internal community process as well. So this is sort of the factors under culture, and digital inclusion has become more and more important. And actually what happened is there's an organization called G3ICT. I don't know if I got that right. But anyway, they actually took our maturity model because they're all about digital equity and inclusion. And they work with the UN, and they created a mapping maturity model. So we kind of coordinated into not just physical equity, financial equity. Can people afford to get the devices and the technologies they need? Do they have the abilities to access the services? Do they have the skills? So social equity, and that's kind of in there. I'm not going to go through all of these, but you get the idea of what we're trying to do here and what we're benchmarking. And so just wanted to bring those up because I think some of these areas, as we've talked about today, are hugely important. And I think all the things we have around governance and policies and process become sort of foundational to getting all the technologies in place and getting people coordinated. So I think that's basically it. And my last slide, because I'm a technologist and I didn't talk about really technology my entire deck, I paid a little homage to some of the things we saw in terms of technology trends, which is actually where we spend a lot of our time thinking about. And I think this kind of maps what we've heard today, right? I mean, just wrapping up from Dell, Intel, from the folks that gave their presentations. We talked about security, privacy, data, all under trust. We talked about cloud. Cloud is going to be really, really important. I think we all know that, but we have to do a lot of work migrating some of those systems and applications. Software, what's happening there, edge computing, and also what's happening with place. I think workplace, both for the community and also for our employees. I think, there's some fluidity there. So that's it. Thank you so much for letting me come back. I look forward to having a drink with you all in the hallway. And thanks.
Thank you, Ruthbea. I'd like all of you to please give yourselves a round of applause for sticking with possibly your first in-person event in a year and a half. So thank you very much. And the next big applause goes for our sponsors, Dell and Intel as our platinum sponsors, Cisco, Varuna, and Tyler as our gold sponsors, Data.World, Z Prime, and Downtown Austin Alliance as our silver sponsors. Please give them a round of applause. So now you all came in knowing why this is important. Hopefully you've seen a lot that reinforces that expands upon that gets you fired up to do some new things, maybe start this month, but certainly as soon as the holidays are over. I hope we all have a great 2022. The summit will be back and bigger than ever in San Antonio in probably April. Is that right? Probably April in San Antonio, not from here, home of the second best breakfast tacos in the state. Is that right? Yeah. So certainly very excited about going to San Antonio in April. We don't have the exact dates yet. We want to make sure that we work around Chelsea's other conference, Smart Cities Connect, and also Smart Cities Week, but very excited to take this to San Antonio next, then Houston, then Dallas, and then we'll work out with your input other cities around the state of Texas to do this. That's all we have for today. We will be in touch with you about how to view these recordings, access these slides, maybe in touch with you with some summary points just to keep your memories on it and your focus on it. But now it's time to network, or booze and schmooze, as I like to call it. So enjoy some happy hour out here, and we look forward to talking. What was that? What? I still didn't hear you, Jessica. Okay. We'll be out in the connector lobby here for the happy hour.